Let's bring in KT McFarland, former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor. Thank you for coming in this morning. Great to see you.
Thank you.
You were listening to the speech with us, sitting here on the curvy couch. What were your thoughts?
This is the culmination of what Donald Trump started 8 years ago. 8 years ago, in the first couple of days of his administration, we're all sitting in the Situation Room, just like we're sitting here. And we're saying, what should our policy be towards the Saudis? They were having an internal generational struggle. And I said, well, we've always backed the old guys. They've been doing business with us for 40 years. And Trump says, no, we're going to have confidence in the next generation. The Saudis, we're going to have UAE, Qatar, we're going to go for the younger guys. They're untried, they're untested, but they promise the future. That was a huge bet that Donald Trump took. He had the confidence that they would deliver, and they have. I mean, Mohammed bin Salman modernized his society, opened up his economy, and now look, President Trump is doing a victory dance.
And people did point out that he brought up before that he thinks Qatar was a supporter of terror. And he had brought up that, people have to change in Saudi Arabia. And he brought up for the 9/11 families. We still have a lot of questions about the hijackers. But he seems to have also recognized that MBS is a new generation with a brand new focus and needs to be a fresh look, and also sees Qatar as much more complex than coming in and saying they support terror because Hamas is there. They're also supporting Israel because they're a foundation for talks and for other things. And also they were a place that we went to get Afghanistan talks going in Doha with his administration. And they also said, why don't you build an air base here and have a huge presence in the Middle East and make it a hub? So we kept that base. It is a key base. And at the same time, we don't love the fact that staying in the Four Seasons is 3 Hamas higher-ups.
But you need somebody to be the guy in the middle to do the negotiating.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not having a negotiation, right? You're just sort of screaming at each other one way or the other. So I think Qatar plays an extremely important, pivotal position in this.
Why is Donald Trump different than any other president when it comes to the negotiations with these countries? I mean, I guess you've had other presidents that tried to, share optimism, but he's leaning into the economic prosperity message and giving countries almost a choice. Either you, just like he did with Kim Jong-un, you take this for your people, you get your economy surging, or you can go to war with us.
Yeah. And he said, the speech he made in Saudi Arabia is going to turn out to be one of the keynote speeches of his career and probably of American presidents in the last several decades, because he said, chaos? Do you want chaos? Or do you want commerce? Do you want war? Or do you want peace? And when he then said, we're not going to tell you how you got to think, which God to worship, how to govern yourself. That's up to you. You modernize your own society, but we'll trade with you. And that's the key. Every other president, whether it was George W. Bush, whether it was Biden, even whether it was Obama, let's all go to war.
First,
let's
Obama wanted to apologize.
Yeah, well, first we apologize, then we topple your leaders with nothing left underneath it. But President Trump is saying, determine your own destiny. And this is not a new thing with him. When he was his first term, when he went to the UN General Assembly, he gave a speech. People didn't really pay a lot of attention to what he said. But he said, you decide your own destiny. America is no longer going to be the person who tells you how to think, what kind of government to have, what kind of society to build. You do it.
KT, there's a report in NBC that NBC's reporting on that Iran's supreme leader told NBC that Iran is ready to sign this nuclear deal in exchange for lifting economic sanctions. The headline on NBC is top Iranian official says Tehran would forego highly enriched uranium in nuclear deal with Trump. What do you make of it?
So there's only one word that matters in that, and that's highly enriched uranium. They're not, the whole point is that you should enrich it outside of the country. Somebody else should enrich it. You bring it in. But if Iran is allowed to have its enrichment facilities and they promise you, well, it's only going to go to a certain level, it's only going to be low enrichment. Look, you just take the centrifuge and spin it around a few more times, you get a highly enriched uranium. So if we're going to empower Iran economically, we have to make sure that those enrichment facilities are not in Iran, because they could change on a dime.
Well, and the problem is Steve Witkoff put it in writing, and if the reports are correct and he says low enrichment, that's a problem. It's got to be zero enrichment.
Zero enrichment.
And the president yesterday said zero enrichment. And then the report over the weekend was that the foreign minister of Iran went up to Saudi Arabia and the UAE and said, let's do a consortium and we agree to enrich together outside our countries, which the UAE agreed to because they legitimately want nuclear power.
Right.
Nobody believes Iran wants nuclear power.
No.
And we went through the carousel of the weapons inspectors with Iraq. One day they're not going to be allowed in, and then we're going to push in, and then we're going to pull out, and they're not going to like one of our policies, and they're going to kick the inspectors out. They're going to begin to enrich uranium again.
Yeah.
Israel's not going to tolerate that. So if Steve Witkoff did that on his own, that's a huge problem.
Look, there's only one deal maker in this administration who matters, and that's Donald J. Trump. And he is the ultimate deal maker, and he's the ultimate closer. So I would prefer to listen to what President Trump says and take him at his word.
Roger that. KT McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Kate.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.